Are you looking to buy your first home? Are you single, perhaps trying to do this on your own, looking at the current market, wondering if it's the right time to buy or not? In this video, I'm going to share my own experiences, my thoughts behind why I wanted to buy a house, and what that process looked like for me as a single woman in my 40s, finally owning my first home. Obviously, this is going to be a little personal. It's very much my take and where I'm at in life, but hopefully it will help you decide if this is a process you want to pursue, or maybe you're just not at that point in life yet. We'll get into how I'm feeling a year and a half into owning a home. Okay, so as promised, I just kind of wanted to give a little overview about why I was looking into buying a home and what led me to this point in my life. I've been renting almost my entire adult life. There were a few years back in my very early 20s when I was still with my ex that we owned a home together. But in that divorce, he got the house and I have been a renter ever since. I've moved across the country. I've rented rooms. I've rented houses. I've been the roommate more often than not. And after the better part of 20 years of this, I was honestly just kind of tired of having roommates. I had some great roommates, don't get me wrong, but I enjoyed the idea of just having my own peace. I finally rented my own place for a while, which was great, but then still landlords sell houses, right? Or your lease is up for renewal, or you need to move for whatever reason, job change. Maybe you don't like the area as much as you thought you would, or maybe your financial situation has changed and you need to move again. If you're in a very nomadic stage of life where you are regularly moving, you're moving jobs, you're moving locations, then chances are you're better off being a renter because it's a lot easier to just pick up and move. Your lease ends, you go and move. Right. I was kind of getting past that point. I had a pretty steady job, definitely had a steady career field, and my life was such that between my animals and my hobbies, having to pack up and move every 1 to 3 years was getting to be pretty expensive and pretty problematic. So with my animals, with my situation, I was ready to have a house of my own. I didn't want to have to worry about being able to take my dog somewhere because of his breed, and I wanted to settle into a home. Those are all good reasons to want to buy. From a financial standpoint, where I live, the area of the US that I live in, the cost of renting a similar home compared to your monthly mortgage and escrow payment is pretty close to being the same. So by renting, you're saving repair costs, but that's really about it. You're not saving month over month on that monthly payment. Obviously, landlords take care of big repairs and that sort of thing, so renting does still have some advantages, but that monthly bill, kind of the same. So for me, that felt like a wash. I knew I'd have to have emergency savings for repairs and that sort of thing, but I also wanted an appreciating asset in my life and a payment that wouldn't change so dramatically with the market. Rent had skyrocketed around here, almost fully doubled over a matter of a few years. Needless to say, wages did not double as well. So I wanted a payment that was steady, that I could rely on, that I knew I could afford. Even if I had to live poorly in other areas of my life, I knew I could make that payment on whatever job I could get if something happened to my regular, steady, full-time job. So I originally started looking to purchase a home back in 2020 in the height of COVID. Prices were great, rates were great, there was inventory. Unfortunately, I found a place that I could settle on. I was reasonably content with that house, started the closing process, and got laid off. So that fell through. Looking back on it, that was a good thing. There were a lot of things I was not prepared for at that time. So when you go to purchase a home, first thing you go through is shopping. You can start shopping around. You can see what's out there. You can look at houses. If you decide that you are in a position to buy and you are ready to take that leap, the first step after deciding this is the direction you're going is a pre-approval. In my case, this was a VA loan for first-time home buyers. There's also FHA and USDA loans. There's a lot of other options out there. If you're a first-time home buyer, there may also be local programs. So definitely look around, ask around. Your real estate agent may or may not be a great resource. Some are fantastic. Mine was amazing and wonderful, but I've heard some horror stories. So definitely do your own research, dig into the programs that are available, and move forward from there. With the VA loan, I did not need a down payment. This does not mean you do not need money up front. You still have closing costs. Closing costs can vary as a percentage of the property, but generally for most of us first-time home buyers buying a smaller starter home, as you would call it, you're looking at around, say, anywhere as low as maybe $3,000 up to, even $15,000 or more if your property is worth more, or perhaps you're buying down some interest rate points, that sort of thing. Mine was somewhere in the middle. It was right around $7,000 to $8,000 for closing costs. Cash, I had to have on hand for closing costs, and that would be in addition to any down payment that you have. Your down payment money is on top of your closing costs, so just be prepared for closing costs. That was a cost and a price tag that I was not prepared for that first time I was looking back in 2020. And the initial quote I got on closing costs was very reasonable. And I was like, cool, I can buy a home. And then when we started closing, the actual closing costs had nearly doubled what I'd originally been told. So again, have more saved than you actually think you'll need, because it might go up, it might go down. Great, that's wonderful. But be prepared. When it comes to looking for your first home, no house property is going to be perfect unless you have unlimited funds. Most of us first-time home buyers do not have unlimited funds. We are going to be making some compromises. With that in mind, pick your top priorities. What are the things in a house or property that really matter to you and your situation? For me, that was, I wanted a large garage that I could pull my truck into one side and still have room for my bikes on the other side, which meant a certain type of garage because my truck is an extended cab pickup. It doesn't fit in a lot of garages, which I found out the hard way with a townhome I had rented at one point. So that for me was one of my big things. I wanted a minimum of 3 bedrooms. I work from home, I work remotely, and I wanted one room as an office where I could set up my workspace and work. I wanted to have a guest room so that I could have friends or family visit and have a place for them to stay that wasn't the couch. I also wanted 2 bathrooms for that same reason. If it's just me, no, I don't need 2 bathrooms. Could I get by with less? Yes, obviously, but I didn't want to. And I'm buying a home. I'm going to be here for a while. So 2 bathrooms, or at least a bath and a half, and a little elbow room from my neighbors. Like, I can see both my neighbors on each side, but we're not feet from each other. I mean, you're measuring this in yards, not feet. Well, I guess you could measure it in feet. Anyways, we're not a matter of a few feet from each other. There's lots of subdivisions where the houses are built really close to each other, 5, 10, 15 feet apart. I didn't want that. I've had not great experiences in places like that. And so I didn't want to be that close to other people. I also wanted to be in an area where I knew the property value would go up, an area where in general it is growing, but also gentrifying in a way. So that was another high priority for me. This is my first home. I'm going to be here for a while, but it is not my forever home. Or at least that's not the plan at this point in my life. Therefore, I wanted a place where I knew the property would increase in value in the time frame that I'm looking to stay here, which is 5 to 10 years. And after that, I do plan on leaving this area. So I wanted a house that in that amount of time, at the very least, I wouldn't lose money, and hopefully I would actually make a little bit out the other side. Outside of that, I also needed no HOA. I have a cargo trailer. I have my Doberman. Like, those are things that can be an issue with an HOA. I just didn't want to deal with HOA fees or the drama and everything else that can come with an HOA. Some HOAs are great. And if there's a specific type of neighborhood and a specific aesthetic you want to live in, then an HOA may be a great fit for you. For me, it wasn't. So I specifically looked for homes with no HOA. After that, one thing I learned the hard way through rentals was ingress and egress from your property. So is there a way out of your neighborhood area that regardless of the time of day, you're not going to be stuck there for 15 minutes waiting to get out of the neighborhood? I didn't want to have a school through my only ingress or egress. Those were very important to me because I've been stuck in the school traffic before, and it's a major problem around here. So again, houses that were near a school or you had to go past a school to get out of that area were off limits. So now I knew what I was looking for, started house hunting. Again, my realtor was great, so she would send me properties to look at. She knew my requirements. After we looked at a few homes, she had a pretty good idea of what I did and didn't like, which helped her narrow down what she sent me. By shopping around and looking at a lot of homes, I realized a few things. Number one, no home was going to be perfect. Number two, if there's one house that you really like and it falls through, chances are another will come along. There will always be another house. It may not be in the time frame you want, but there will be another house. I also realized that there were certain things I really did want and certain things I figured I could live with. So when I started shopping around, I was watching the ads and I had a pretty good idea of which houses were perhaps a good fit or not. I finally went ahead and got my pre-approval from the VA company I chose to work with, and I was ready to start house hunting. Loosely, mind you, my pre-approval was good for 6 months, so I wasn't in a rush. I wasn't in a lease that was going to end, so I was flexible, which was nice to have. There was a house that kept coming up on the market and then being taken off, coming up, taken off. So you kind of knew there was probably some issues that they were fixing or resolving. But by the time I was ready to actually start looking at houses again, this house seemed pretty, like it might be a pretty good match. So I told my realtor, I'm like, hey, I'm just getting curious. Let's go take a look at this house. So we did. We walked it. You can tell there was a little lipstick slapped on the pig, but a lot of the major things were fixed and replaced. So over this time, it had been on and off the market. Roof had been replaced. Major foundation water remediation work had been completed. Water management had been completed, not in a permanent way, but a effective way. And overall, it was actually pretty much what I was looking for. I was kind of excited. I'm like, this house is in my price range. It's what I'm looking for. The area is exactly what I'm looking for. Let's put in an offer. Put in an offer. We did go and look at a couple other houses after that. I didn't like them as much. One of them, the lot was a lot smaller. I didn't like the neighborhood as much. I didn't feel like the homes would rise in value as quickly as they would here. And so next up, my offer was accepted. Yay! Exciting. So now we move into this period where you have to get your inspections done. You have to get through, otherwise you will lose your earnest money. So inspector came through, did his inspections, and we had termite inspection, looked at the house again just to give it a last walk through. And yeah, I was like, this is probably the house. There were a couple little things. We did a couple requests for reduced closing costs to cover some minor repairs that needed to be done. And then because I also had the VA loan, the VA also had to do their own inspection. So they came through and did their inspection. The house passed that. I was in the process of closing on a home. And of course, this was very exciting. It is also a full time as the buyer, because now you have to start going through underwriting and making sure all your T's are crossed, I's are dotted, and making sure that this is really, really what you want to do. You're now committed probably a few $1,000s on that house and making it happen. If you have a great real estate agent, they can make or break this process for you, as can your lender. I don't want to say lucky, because it wasn't luck. I was careful who I chose and worked with, and I was more than happy to fire a lender or an agent if they didn't work for me. But I had a great agent, I had a great lender, and a great lender team who walked me through the process. They were on top of things. They communicated clearly. Honestly, the biggest struggle I had was getting some paperwork from the military, and that was no fault of the lender or the agent. That was the military and their archaic systems. That was my biggest actual stressor during that time, was trying to get these documents so that the VA could actually process my VA loan. And that wasn't their fault. That was the military records. So if you're having to navigate that with a less than stellar team, I have a feeling it would be a lot more complicated and a much less pleasant process. Most of my stress was honestly self-induced. My team was great, and they asked for what they needed. They were very specific. I responded quickly. My agent, if she felt like they were being a little slow, she was on top of following up with people. She took care of the communications with the sellers. She was on top of everything. Again, I had a great team, so find a good team. If you're not happy, find somebody else to work with. Seriously, it will make or break the process for you. Other things to consider, depending on what you want to do with your home, are things like insurance, zoning requirements, HOAs and their requirements. These are all things I had to take into account. With my Doberman, I was limited on options as far as home insurance. A lot of insurance companies still have blanket breed restrictions, and some do not. I had to shop around a little bit for that. You can certainly shop around for different lenders and different rates. I was reasonably happy with what I got, so I didn't do too much shopping around. I knew what market rates were. I knew what other home buyers were getting, and I was in that range. So then finally I got my clear to close. Very exciting. We go in, sign all the paperwork. I was a home buyer. I was given the keys. My agent and I came to the house, and she basically gave me my congratulations, and there we were. I was a first-time home buyer. I had my own home. I took my time moving in. I wasn't on a deadline, so I was able to move in slowly, figure out how I kind of wanted to set things up. I needed to buy some furniture to furnish the house. I didn't go overboard because I didn't want to spend all my pre-saved emergency / moving money, but there were a number of items I did need and was planning on buying. So I purchased those and made do with some of my old stuff. And for the most part, moved in, got settled in, no major issues until my first water bill showed up. I had literally just moved in, like I just started living in the house more often than not, was gone for a weekend and came back to a notice on my front door from the water company. And the notice was excessive water usage, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I just moved into this house. I've taken like 3 showers. This doesn't make any sense. So did a little Google on what it might be, checked all my toilets, checked for, leaking anywhere visible, any outside faucets that maybe got turned on, stuff like that. Couldn't find anything. So I started walking, went to check the meter out front. I made sure everything was off, nothing was running, and then checked the meter out front. It's still going. Okay, clearly water is running somewhere. So I located the main valve to the house, shut that off, let it sit for a few minutes, 5-10 minutes, went back outside, checked the meter again. It's still going. Well, that was pretty clear. I had a leak between the meter and the house. So I start walking around the front lawn and I find a squishy spot. Not a swamp, but it was definitely squishy. Call a plumber, get them out. And I did have a broken pipe between the meter and the house. The repair actually wasn't that bad. It was like $500, but there I was with the $500 bill and I had barely moved into the house. Welcome to home ownership. There's going to be stuff that breaks. If you're not handy, don't feel comfortable Googling how to fix things, plan on having a pretty sizable budget available for those kind of repairs. If you're having to call somebody in for every little problem, it's going to get expensive fast. Their professionals are great. Their knowledge is amazing. They know what they're doing, but they're not cheap. That knowledge comes at a cost, and sometimes it might be worth spending a couple hours figuring out how to do it yourself. Yeah, sure, the professional will get it done in 30 minutes. It might take you an hour or two, but the cost versus the time, you have to weigh that. Every person's situation is different. Weigh your situation. Me, I'm pretty handy. I know my way around a multimeter. I understand electrical concepts. I have worked on vehicles. I've worked on generators and air conditioners. These are all things I've done in my past. So looking things up on YouTube or Google is pretty useful for me. And for a lot of things, I can take care of it myself. I've done repairs to my AC unit. I've cleaned that and done not a Freon service that I'm not certified to do, but done the cleaning, the general annual service that you would normally have done. I've repaired the heater. I've replaced a circuit board on my HVAC system, shot those things, figured out what the problem was, replaced the problem. Other little home repairs, like my outlets in this house were old and icky, replacing those. You can save yourself a lot of grief by being able to fix these things yourself. There were some things I was not fully prepared for that came with owning a home. First up, no matter how much you love that home when you look at it, once you're living there for a little bit, you are going to have regrets. You may not hate things, but some people do. I only had like minor regrets. I was like, the road I live on is busier than I would like, but it's not so busy that it's a major problem. The house is set back far enough. I'm okay with it. Part of me wishes I would have waited a little longer for a house in a neighborhood off of a road like this. Oh well, I'm here now. The other thing I realized was that things that I knew would bug me a little bit sometimes actually bug you a lot. So the driveway here I knew was tore up. I knew it was going to need repairs in the future. You can use it the way it is, but it's not pretty. It's ugly. It needs help. But I knew that would bother me. I didn't realize how much. I'm not kidding. Every single time I have to pull out of my driveway or I pull into it, I hate my driveway. I have an idea of how I want to fix it, what I want done with it that will make it the driveway that I love. That is going to be really expensive, and it's not in my budget anytime soon. So because of that, every single day, there's this little part of me that hates that driveway and regrets that choice, or at the very least regrets not understanding the impact it would have. There's going to be regrets. Accept that there will be regrets, and they're not the end of the world. You still own a home. It's still yours, and there's still a lot of great things about it. And someday when you have the money, you can fix those things. Neighbors you can't really fix, but you can build fences. So yeah, a few things that I'm glad I did and that helped me get through that first year of home ownership. First, I took some time to get to know my house. I let my house get to know me and me to get to know it. A little under the Tuscan sun, taking some time getting to know each other. As I got into the house, I realized that most of the prior issues were resolved, but every now and then you come across something. One thing that I do regret not doing prior to buying was talking to the neighbors more. So neighbors can be a great resource on the history of the house or the property. Prior to buying, I did not go knock on the neighbors' doors and talk to them. Part of me wishes I had. At this point, I'm a year and a half into owning the home. It has not been a major problem, but there were a few things that came up talking to the neighbors that I maybe would have had, at the very least, another more specific inspection done on prior to buying. Now I already own it, so it's kind of a moot point. But for example, there was apparently an issue with the septic system that the previous company who owned the home had to fix. Now, I don't know the extent of those repairs. All I know is what the neighbor was telling me about how people were hauling buckets of stuff in and out, and it was apparently a mess. By the time I purchased, that was cleaned up. I've been here a year and a half. I've had no issues whatsoever. But had I known that, I would have gotten a septic inspection. My realtor didn't mention getting a septic inspection. That's the one shortcoming I think she did have. Home inspector didn't really suggest that, or if they did, it was very underplayed. And my main thing is like, yeah, I haven't had any issues, but it would have been nice to know that, yeah, this is good, or you're looking at a big bill in a few years. My bad. I didn't do that. If you're on a septic, get a septic inspection before you purchase. Anyways, I'm just glad I haven't had any major issues. I have friends who bought a house about a year before I did, and they were having to do major septic repairs. So again, if you're on a septic system, get a septic inspection done prior to buying. That is my biggest regret in my buying process, was that I didn't do that then. So whatever problems I bought are mine now. Understand that maintaining your home is going to be a lot of work. I've owned shouldn't say owned. I have lived in single family homes before and had to maintain the yard and that sort of thing. But when it's your house versus somebody else's house, the mindset is different. Like, I care a lot more about my yard here than I did in my rental. I kept it nice enough in my rental, but I didn't worry about improving it a whole lot because I wasn't going to spend a whole bunch of money on somebody else's property that they weren't going to spend money on. So there's a different mindset that comes into it too. You care more about it when you actually own it. And I've seen that reflected in a number of first-time home buyers. They realize that they are stressing out a lot more about things that they probably just accepted or overlooked when they were renting. So a mantra I still use all the time is, how much would this bother me if I was just renting this house? And the more I say that to myself, the better things are. And I realize that, yes, this thing is annoying. Yes, I want to add it to my list of things I want to repair, but it's something I can live with. It's not the end of the world. I wouldn't be freaking out about it if it was in a rental. For example, I have an outlet in my living room that doesn't work. I even tried replacing it. There's something in the wiring that outlet doesn't work. Okay, that's fine. If I was in a rental, I wouldn't care, especially if the landlord wasn't about to repair it, which, let's be honest, most places I've lived, the landlords aren't going to worry about an outlet that ain't working. Same thing I've kind of used with the driveway. Like, the driveway would annoy me if I was renting. I wouldn't be freaking out about it. So at this point, I let it annoy me, and there's some repairs that I'll be attempting to do here with some water management that was never properly done. Again, that's taking out part of the driveway. I'm going to try and fix that. But actually fixing the driveway, doing it the permanent fix, that's just going to have to wait. That's all there is to it. And I reduce my stress about it by my mantra: how much would this bother me if I was renting? And generally it's like, not that much. I'm like, yeah, it would annoy me, but I just deal with it because it is what it is. When you finally get your home and you move into it, take some time to make it your home. If you're on a limited budget, maybe you won't be able to afford to do a whole lot of things like painting or upgrading appliances or upgrading cabinets or that sort of thing. Maybe you're going to have to deal with those things for a while, but even just some artwork, a rug, anything that makes your house yours will help a lot. I was on a very limited budget upon moving in. I didn't want to touch my emergency fund. I wanted to leave that intact. So that didn't leave a whole lot of money for customizing my house outside of the furniture I already knew I was going to buy. So I've gone with a cheaper way of customizing my home. And rather than purchasing expensive artwork, I've just gotten some die-cut vinyl stickers that go on the walls. They're simple, they're easy to put up, and they're cheap. They make it mine. They give the rooms the feel that I'm looking for, and they're not a big investment. So when I get to the point of wanting to paint the walls, or I'm in a position to remodel a room, I'm not going to be clashing with an expensive piece of artwork or something like that. So by making my home mine and just those little touches, it's really helped me just settle in and be glad that I have my home with my stuff set up the way I like. And understand that this is a process. This is an ongoing relationship that continually will need maintenance. This isn't a one and done, you buy your home and everything is wonderful and great. No, it's always something. There's always stuff, and just accept that this is a journey, that this is a path. And once I kind of accepted that this really is a journey through the life of my relationship with this house, it made it a lot more tolerable to put up with the nuances and issues and little things that crop up. I didn't need to make it all perfect right off the bat. And that first year was the hardest part to get used to that. But now that I'm past the 1 year mark and getting closer to the 18-month mark, I think I've settled in a lot more and just become a little more accepting of the shortcomings. And yeah, they're still on my mind to fix and replace eventually, but overall, I have no regrets buying a home. I'm so glad I purchased. I'm so glad I'm no longer beholden to a landlord's whims. If something breaks and I need a repair person out, I call the repair person who will come and get it done, rather than going through 3 different of the cheapest contractors the landlord or property management goes through before they fix the problem, and 3 weeks later the problem still isn't fixed. I call the right people the first day and get it taken care of. Or I just go fix it myself if it's something I am capable of fixing myself or troubleshooting and fixing myself. Worst part is waiting for the parts to arrive. My dogs love having a home. I love having a place to come back to. And I really enjoy my peace in my own home. Like I said at the beginning, I've rented for years, many, many years. And renting had some perks. I'm at a position in life and a point in life where I'm so glad I was able to buy, and I did so. To get to a position of being able to buy, I did have to work my full-time job and a contract job, but that allowed me to get my finances in a place where I could have my closing costs, I could have my moving costs, and I could still maintain an emergency fund. It's not real easy to come up with that money as a single person. Honestly, for like 2-3 years there, it pretty much sucked because I was working the full-time job, a part-time job, and the contract job. It's a lot. It's mentally and physically exhausting, but I don't regret it at all. It was so worth it to get my own home, no longer be on the hook for a landlord. The only price increases I have to worry about are taxes and insurance, but the largest chunk of my monthly payment isn't going to change. I have refinanced already once. Thankfully, with the VA loan, it's not a overly complicated process to refinance. So when rates dropped, I was able to jump in on that. That brought my payment down several $100s a month. Great. And yeah, I'm super excited to finally have my own home. It's not for everybody. And while I encourage people to purchase a home in most cases, if they're really to, that doesn't mean it's right for everybody. So unless this is something that you want, that is important to you, and you're at a point in your life where you really do want to settle down, you want that appreciating asset in your portfolio of bills. Home buying isn't for everybody, and there's nothing wrong with not being ready to own a home. It's a lot of responsibility, it's a lot of work, and it limits your flexibility as far as locations and your ability to move or change things. So not for everybody, but if you're at that point in life, hopefully some of my story and some of what I went through will help encourage you to proceed, give you a few things to watch out for. And if you're looking at buying or recently bought and anything in this video you found helpful, please leave a comment, let me know. Check out my other videos, hit that subscribe and like button if you found this helpful at all, and we will see you on the next one. Thanks for joining.